Right now, you are likely feeling the persistent, hollow ache of someone who has spent the entire day, and perhaps the better part of your life staring down into the dark, still water of a well, hoping to catch a glimpse of the moon that you believe belongs to you. You feel that if you could only hold the reflection perfectly still, if you could only prevent the surface from rippling, you would finally possess the meaning you have been searching for. It is a specific, quiet exhaustion, the heavy, leaden realization that no matter how much you achieve, no matter how many relationships you secure, or how many goals you reach, the light you are trying to capture keeps slipping away the moment you try to scoop it up. You are tired of the bucket, tired of the fraying rope, and tired of the dark, cold depths that offer you nothing but your own distorted face looking back at you, shivering in the uneven light. The air in your room is cool, drifting through an open window with the faint, metallic scent of night-blooming jasmine and the damp, earthy fragrance of a garden recovering from a long day. You are tucked beneath the weight of a heavy, textured coverlet, and the lamp beside you casts a soft amber glow that dances like a flicker on water against the far wall. The house is hushed, save for the rhythmic low creak of the floorboards settling as the temperature drops. You are not broken because you feel this hollow hunger. Your inability to catch the moon is not a failure of character, and your restlessness is not proof that you are missing your destiny. Tonight, we will not force your mind to stop searching. We will not try to drain the well of your thoughts, nor will we demand that you stop feeling the ache of your own emptiness. We will simply learn how to stop looking down into the water and start looking up to where the source actually resides. You are safe enough to soften. You are safe enough to admit that the bucket is heavy, the rope is slick, and you are tired of the hunt. You do not have to solve the puzzle of your own purpose tonight. You only have to be the one who is finally willing to set the bucket aside, step back from the dark stone rim, and feel the solid, steady earth beneath your feet. There is a strange, quiet paradox at the heart of this constant reaching for external meaning. The more you struggle to catch a sense of wholeness from your reflections, the more you convince yourself that you are a vessel that is somehow lacking. We spend our years staring into the well of our own lives, obsessed with what we see in the water: our status, our flaws, our past mistakes, our social standing, believing that the reflection is the reality. We think that if we could just polish the water, if we could just make the well perfectly still, we would finally feel full. But the Buddhist insight offered to the one who stands by the well is quite different. The light you are seeking was never inside the water to begin with. You are not an empty bucket that needs to be filled with the moon's glow. You are the sky that holds the moon. Your suffering is not a sign of your incompleteness. It is a sign that you have been looking in the wrong direction for your own light. If it feels right, take a slow, gentle breath, and as you do, imagine the sensation of unclasping your fingers from the frayed, damp rope of your own striving. Feel the sudden, sweet release in your palms, the way your hand relaxes when it is no longer tasked with hauling up a reflection that will only vanish the moment it touches the air. You are stepping away from the stone rim, away from the icy, dark pull of the well, and into a space where you are no longer expected to prove your value through your catch. You do not have to be a master of reflections. You do not have to be a successful harvester of light. You only have to be the one who is finally arriving in the sanctuary of their own existence as it is, without the need for a trophy. You are safe enough to let the bucket hang empty in the dark. You do not have to know if the moon is yours or not. You only have to know that you are here, grounded and perfectly, profoundly sufficient as you are. Maybe you have felt this way for a long time, that if you ever stopped trying to fill yourself with external affirmations, you would discover that you are made of nothing at all. You have been treating your own life like a thirst that can never be quenched, a hunger that grows the more you try to satisfy it with things that are not actually food. You think that by anticipating the arrival of the next achievement, the next person, or the next praise, you are staying ahead of the dark. But all this staring into the well is doing is keeping your neck cramped, your eyes strained, and your heart perpetually hungry. The truth is, you are far more at home in the vastness of the sky than you could ever be in the narrow, circular confines of the water. You are not required to be enlightened or perfectly settled tonight. You are not required to have discovered the final purpose of your life before you are permitted to close your eyes. You are only asked to notice the habit of the seeker, that small, sharp urge to lean over the edge of the well, to look for a sign in the reflection, or to mourn the ripples that have blurred your image of yourself. When you notice that urge, you do not need to be ashamed of it. It is just an old rhythm you have been practicing for so long that it has become the shape of your attention. You can just notice the lean, acknowledge how much effort it takes to keep looking down, and then, with profound gentleness, let your gaze lift. You are the observer who is finally realizing that the reflection was never the moon. Take another slow, deep breath and notice how the air moves through you, filling the spaces that have felt thin and depleted by the pressure to be more. There is no need for you to be anyone other than who you are in this very second. Your breath does not require your permission to be rhythmic, and your heart does not require your permission to keep you steady. There is a deep, ancient intelligence at work in your own being, one that knows exactly how to exist without needing to hold a reflection to prove it is alive. You can lean into that intelligence tonight. You can trust that the forces which hold the sky in place and turn the moon across the heavens are also the forces that hold you. Even when you feel as though you are just a small, stationary object in a world that is obsessed with capturing light, you are held by reality, and reality is far more vast, far more forgiving, and far more accepting than the rigid ideas you have held about your own success. You might be worried that if you stop trying to catch your life, you will become meaningless, or that you will lose your way in the dark. But this is the fear of the seeker, not the sky. The sky knows exactly what it is. Even when the moon is hidden behind clouds, the sky is expansive, it is enduring, and it is perfectly content to exist in the rain, in the wind, and in the quiet of the night, without ever needing to prove its brilliance to the well. You are that sky. You have always been that sky. You do not need to hold a reflection to be worthy of the moonlight. In a moment, we will step into a story of a temple keeper who spent his life obsessed with the stillness of his well, believing that the moonlight on the surface was the only holy thing he possessed. This story may feel significant, not because you have heard it before, but because you have lived the struggle of trying to keep the surface of your own life perfectly still, so that you might finally see a version of yourself that feels enough. It is the beginning of a shift, a way to see the heavy, damp rope in your own mind and wonder what might happen if you were to simply let the rope hang, just for this evening. The darkness is not a void, it is the soft, welcoming shelter of your own inner courtyard, where you can finally stop looking down and start looking up. You are doing well. Just be here, in this breath, in this quiet, with nowhere else to go and nothing left to prove. And perhaps this is where the teaching begins to touch your own heart in the quiet realization that you are not the one who must scoop the light out of the well, but the one who has always been under the light, already whole, just waiting for the water to stop being the focus of your life so you can finally see the stars. In a quiet temple, nestled deep within a valley where the pines lean toward the earth as if listening to the roots, there lived a keeper named Jun. His life was centered around a single stone well that sat in the very heart of the temple courtyard. This well was renowned throughout the province for the stillness of its water, which acted like a dark, polished mirror for the sky. It was Jun's duty to ensure that the surface of this water remained undisturbed. He believed that the moon's reflection in the well was not merely a light on the surface, but a manifestation of the temple's holiness. If the water rippled, he felt as if the temple had lost its connection to the heavens. Jun was a man of intense, quiet vigilance. He spent his hours pacing the perimeter of the stone rim, his hands often gripping a long, handled wooden bucket that he used to clear away any stray leaves or debris that drifted down from the overhanging trees. His heart was always heavy, for the world was full of disturbances. The wind was his enemy, for it stirred the surface. The rain was an intruder, for it pockmarked the reflection of the moon. He felt the weight of the temple's spiritual safety entirely upon his own shoulders. If he allowed the reflection to shatter, he was certain he had failed in his purpose, that he had allowed the meaning of his life to be broken by a simple gust of air. One particularly clear, crisp night, The moon hung like a silver pendant in the vast velvet blackness above. June stood by the well, his eyes locked onto the reflection below. He held his bucket taut, ready to fend off the slightest fallen needle from the pine trees. He was tired, his bones aching from years of crouching and watching. But he dared not walk away. He feared that if he turned his back for even a moment, the world would intervene, the water would ripple, and the moon he loved so much would be lost. His hands were calloused from the rope, and his mind was a tangled knot of anticipation and dread. An old master, who had lived in a tiny hut behind the kitchen for many years, stepped out into the moonlight. He carried nothing but a simple, unadorned teacup. He walked to the edge of the well, his footsteps silent, and looked down at the water. Jun tensed, instinctively shifting his body to protect the surface, his knuckles white against the wooden rim of his bucket. The master didn't say a word. He simply watched the moon's reflection, his face relaxed, his eyes soft. He looked like a man who was watching a cloud pass, or a leaf fall, someone who was witnessing, not someone who was guarding. The master reached down, picked up a jagged, heavy stone from the ground near his feet, and before June could cry out in alarm, he dropped the rock directly into the center of the well. The impact was sharp. The sound echoed off the courtyard walls, and the reflection of the moon was instantly shattered into 1,000 dancing, silver fragments. John gasped, his heart leaping into his throat as if he had just witnessed an act of desecration. He dropped his bucket, the wood clattering loudly against the stone floor, and stared into the water, mourning the loss of the perfect image. The water continued to churn, the light breaking and reforming in ways that made no sense. The meaning of the temple now scattered across the dark, undulating surface. June felt a hot surge of anger and confusion, a physical pain in his chest that felt as though he had been struck himself. He looked at the old man, his voice trembling. "Why?" he whispered. "The reflection was perfect. It was the only thing I had to show for my years of watching. Now it is broken and the sky seems empty." The master didn't look at him immediately. He continued to watch the water as the ripples began to subside, as the fragments of light slowly merged back into a rhythmic, shifting pattern. He then reached out and tapped the masterfully carved stone rim of the well with his fingernail, a soft, deliberate sound that drew Jun's eyes away from the water and toward the solid, permanent structure of the stonework. "Look up," the master said, his voice barely a murmur. "You have spent your life trying to possess the moon by holding it in a puddle. The moon never moved. The moon was never in the well. The moon is in the sky, and it has been shining down on you the entire time you were worrying about the surface of this water." The master turned and walked away, leaving the bucket lying abandoned on the ground. June stood alone in the dark, the stone still heavy in the water, the ripples finally beginning to smooth. He looked down, and he saw the reflection returning. But this time he felt a strange, cold clarity. He realized that the reflection was just a play of light, a temporary event in a deep, dark place. It was not the light itself. He looked up. The sight hit him with the force of a long-awaited homecoming. The moon was there, vast and steady, entirely untouched by the rock, by the ripples, by the wind, or by his own frantic, tired years of watching. It did not need him to guard it. It did not need his bucket. It did not need his worry. It shone with a light that required no permission from him to exist. The ache in his chest, the one he had carried for decades, the one that said he was responsible for keeping the light alive, suddenly lightened. He was not the protector of the moon. He was simply a man who had spent his life staring at the ground, forgetting that he was standing under the open, infinite sky. This story of the temple keeper is not a condemnation of your search, nor is it a judgment of the time you have spent looking at the ripples of your own life. Perhaps you have felt this too, the sense that you are the guardian of your own meaning, and that if you ever stop watching, checking, and straining to keep the surface perfect, the light will vanish, and you will be left with nothing. You have carried the bucket of your own self-doubt for so long that you have forgotten how to lift your head. You have been so busy trying to scoop the meaning out of the well of your experiences, your history, your relationships, your successes that you have grown exhausted from the effort of maintaining the reflection. But the master's lesson is a promise, not a reproach. You are not an empty vessel that needs to be filled by the reflection of the moon. You are the sky itself, and you have always been the container for the light, even when you were looking down, even when the water was stirred, and even when you were certain that you had lost your way. The moon of your true self, of your inherent worth, is not fragile. It cannot be shattered by a rock. It cannot be disturbed by a ripple. It cannot be lost, no matter how tired your eyes are from the long, dark, and lonely watch you have kept. When you feel the phantom urgency to get it right, to make the surface of your life perfect, so that you can finally feel safe, try to remember the sight of the water after the stone fell. The ripples did not end the world, they only showed the water for what it was, a moving, living surface. You are allowed to have ripples. You are allowed to be disturbed. You are allowed to be a person whose reflection shifts, changes, and occasionally breaks, because the light that actually matters is not in the water. The light is above, and it is holding you. Try to notice the physical weight of that well-watching in your own life. It often sits in the shoulders, in the base of the neck, or in the tightness of your jaw. It is the posture of someone who is permanently hunched over an edge. Tonight, in the safety of this quiet room, you have permission to stop leaning. You have permission to stand up, to turn away from the well, and to breathe the air of the open sky. You do not need to solve the state of your own reflection before you are worthy of resting. You are allowed to be tired. You are allowed to be unfinished. You are allowed to stop guarding the surface and simply exist beneath the moon, right where you have always been. It is strange how much energy we waste trying to stabilize the surface, isn't it? We think that if we can just get the water to be smooth, if we can just get our anxiety to vanish, if we can just make our history neat and clean, if we can just convince everyone around us that we are whole, then we will finally be at peace. But the Master's Stone was a mercy, not a punishment. It was the only thing that could force June to look up, and maybe your own exhaustion, your own feelings of being less than or behind, are the stone that is finally being dropped into your own well, inviting you to stop looking down and to finally feel the vast, unburdened expanse of your own life. There is a profound freedom in realizing that you do not need to be the keeper of your own light. You are not responsible for the moon's brilliance. You are only invited to witness it. When you feel the familiar urge to fix your life, to scrub the reflection, or to mourn the ripples, try to take a slow, deep breath and feel the ground beneath your feet. You are solid, you are here. The sky is holding you. You are doing perfectly well, simply by noticing the struggle and choosing to turn your eyes elsewhere. The night is deep, the room is quiet, and the bucket you have been hauling for so long is finally allowed to touch the floor. You are safe enough to set it down. You are safe enough to stop watching the water. And you are safe enough at long last to simply breathe in the dark. Perhaps this is where the teaching begins to touch your own heart, in the quiet realization that you are not the one who must scoop the light out of the well, but the one who has always been under the light, already whole, just waiting for the water to stop being the focus of your life, so you can finally see the stars. The jagged stone that shattered the reflection in the temple well is a mirror for the way you have been living your own life, perpetually bracing for the moment the surface would break. When June stared into the water, his suffering was not rooted in the existence of the moon or the inevitable arrival of the wind. It was rooted in his conviction that he was the steward of a reality that was fundamentally fragile. This story does not suggest that your feelings of care are misplaced, nor does it ask you to become indifferent to the events of your life. Instead, it invites you to recognize that the exhaustion you carry is a burden created by your insistence on maintaining a static, perfect image. When you treat your peace as a reflection that must be protected from every ripple, you are living in a state of permanent defensive tension. You are not witnessing your life, you are trying to choreograph it, believing that if you are diligent enough, you can keep the water still forever. The reality, however, is that life is movement. It is wind, it is rain, and it is the inevitable falling of leaves. The suffering you experience is the friction between the life that is actually happening and the life you are demanding to see in the well. Buddhist wisdom suggests that we are frequently caught in the habit of creating a second wound. The first wound is simply the experience of being alive in a world that shifts, the moments when you feel rejected, the times you feel unseen, the instances where plans crumble, or the raw ache of feeling like you are not enough. These are the natural conditions of our existence. The wind that touches the water. We cannot stop the wind. We cannot control the falling leaf. But the second wound is the one we add ourselves. The layer of judgment we layer over the first experience. It is the voice that whispers, if I were better, this wouldn't have shaken me. Or I must fix this immediately so no one sees that I am disturbed. This second wound is the friction of the bucket being hauled up again and again, the frantic attempt to restore a state of perfection that never truly existed. When we stop adding this second layer of self-criticism, we are not left without pain. But we are left with a pain that is clean and temporary, a pain that moves through us like the ripples in the well, rather than a scar that defines our identity. The temple keeper's obsession was not just a desire for beauty, it was a desperate strategy for safety. He thought that if the reflection remained perfect, he would be immune to the feeling of being vulnerable. You have likely used the same strategy, attempting to manage the surface of your life, your reputation, your relationships, your internal narrative, so that no one, including yourself, would have to look into the dark, empty depth of the well. We imagine that by keeping the reflection polished, we are hiding our own lack, or that by keeping our expectations perfectly aligned with the world, we can avoid the pain of disappointment. Yet, the wisdom of the Master reveals that the reflection was never the source of the temple's holiness. The holiness was in the sky itself, which was always present, whether or not the water was still. When you seek validation from the external world, the praise of others, the successful completion of a task, the perfect alignment of your circumstances, you are trying to catch the moon in a bucket. You are looking for the light in the reflection, and in doing so, you are missing the sky that is holding you. This perspective is not meant to make you feel as though your efforts have been wasted, but to show you that you have been looking in the wrong direction for the source of your stability. Attachment, in this sense, is not about the things you possess or the goals you pursue. It is the tight, suffocating grip you keep on the idea that these external conditions must remain fixed for you to be okay. It is the belief that if the water ripples, your value is diminished. Mindfulness, then, is the simple, quiet act of lifting your eyes away from the reflection and looking up at the sky. It is the realization that the light does not depend on the stillness of your circumstances. You can be moved, you can be shaken, you can have your day interrupted by a jagged stone, and you can still be the one who carries the light. The light is not something you gather, it is the truth of who you are, already shining, always present, and entirely indifferent to the temporary turbulence of your current circumstances. You have spent so much energy trying to be the keeper of the well, and it has left you feeling depleted and defensive. The irony, which we can look at with compassion tonight, is that the very things you were protecting, your sense of purpose, your inner worth, your feeling of belonging, were never in the well to begin with. They were never dependent on the surface being smooth. Because you have been so focused on the water, you have missed the sky. You have treated the ripples as failures, rather than acknowledging them as the natural rhythm of a life that is being lived. It is not that you are meant to be cold or detached, but that you are invited to be vast. The sky is not cold because it allows the wind to move. The sky is vast because it is large enough to contain both the wind and the stillness. Your heart is that sky. It is large enough to contain your anxiety, your joy, your moments of feeling behind, and your moments of feeling grace, all without being fundamentally changed by them. This realization is the foundation of true letting go. Letting go is not the act of casting away the things you love or the goals you hold. It is the act of releasing the demand that they be permanent. It is the decision to stop using your life as a mirror you must defend. When you look at your own suffering, that heavy, nagging feeling that you are constantly needing to do more or be better, you can begin to see it as the well-keeper's duty. You have been guarding a reflection. You have been trying to protect an image of yourself that can never be fixed into a permanent state. This is why you feel so tired. It is hard work to maintain a fiction. It is exhausting to keep the water still in a world that is defined by movement. But tonight, you have the opportunity to acknowledge that you don't have to keep the water still. You don't have to be the guardian of the temple well. You are free to turn your head and look up. As you sit with this, notice how your mind might resist the idea that it can stop protecting its reflection. There is a part of you that will say, but if I don't guard the well, I will lose my sense of self. That part of you is trying to keep you safe, just like the keeper who feared the wind. Thank that part of you for its vigilance, but understand that its strategy is outdated. You have evolved past the need for the bucket and the rope. You are ready to inhabit the sky. When you feel the old, familiar panic, the urge to fix a situation, to smooth a conversation, or to perfect your feeling of being, remember the stone. Acknowledge the ripple. Let the water be what it is, and then gently, firmly, turn your attention to the vastness that is already holding you. There is no need to make the ripple go away before you can rest. The rest is found in the sky, and the sky is always here. Perhaps this is where the teaching begins to touch your own heart, in the quiet realization that you are not the one who must scoop the light out of the well, but the one who has always been under the light, already whole, just waiting for the water to stop being the focus of your life so you can finally see the stars. Your identity is not a snapshot of a perfect surface. It is the infinite capacity to witness the light, to experience the wind, and to know that you are safe in the midst of it all. You are not a vessel that needs to be filled. You are the space in which the universe is unfolding. You can feel the relief of this, the way your shoulders finally drop, the way your chest finds its rhythm, the way the world seems a little less like a storm to be managed and a little more like a sky to be experienced. You are doing well, simply by being the one who is finally, after so much effort, willing to lift their eyes. The stone has fallen, the ripples are moving, and in the space they create, you are finding a new, quiet, and profoundly steady sense of who you are, far beyond the reach of any well's edge. If it feels right, allow your eyelids to soften into a gentle, heavy stillness, letting the edges of your room fade into the background of your consciousness. We are not here to act as keepers of a well, and we are not here to fret over the state of the surface. We are here to sit by the courtyard of your own awareness, to feel the cool stone beneath your hands, and to finally understand that you are not the reflection that shivers in the water, but the vast, silent sky that holds everything. You do not need to be a guardian of your own meaning tonight. You do not need to be a protector of your own image. You only need to be the one who is finally willing to set down the heavy bucket, leave the rope slack on the ground, and rest in the honest, deep quiet of your own presence. Take a slow, gentle breath, and as you do, imagine the sensation of unclasping your fingers from the handle of that imaginary bucket, the one you have been using to haul up pieces of your history, your anxieties, and your fears, trying to make sense of who you are. Feel the weight of the wood in your palm. It is cold, worn, and damp, a symbol of all the times you have tried to grasp at proof that you are enough. As you exhale, imagine setting that bucket down on the flagstones of your inner courtyard. You are not letting go in a panic. You are simply allowing the weight to leave your hands. You are stepping back from the dark, circular rim of the well, away from the obsession with the reflection, and letting your awareness drift upward toward the expansive dark and endless sky. Feel your chest expand and release, the tension held in your shoulders beginning to dissolve, as if the sharp, cold grip of your self-imposed duty is being replaced by the warm, soft air of a night that requires nothing from you. Observe the space between your thoughts, not as a gap that needs to be occupied by more self-analysis or more fixing, but as the quiet, infinite sky that supports the moon. Perhaps a thought arises, whispering about a moment when you felt inadequate, or a worry about the face you must present to the world tomorrow. When you notice this movement, you do not need to reach for the bucket. You do not need to try to scoop it up or smooth it out. Simply acknowledge the thought, name it gently as a ripple on the water, and visualize yourself placing that worry, not into the well, but simply letting it float on the surface of your awareness without needing to catch it. You are not suppressing the anxiety. You are simply changing your relationship to it. You are moving it from the active, surging center of your life to the periphery, where it can exist without being the main event. Notice the physical sensation of that release. When you stop trying to control the reflection, where does your energy go? It settles into your bones. It returns to the steady, rhythmic rise and fall of your diaphragm. Feel the warmth of your skin as you rest your hands against your own body. This warmth is the most reliable harbor you will ever find. It is the proof that you are here, that you are grounded, and that you are existing in a reality that is far more tactile than any image in a well. If a feeling of restlessness persists, a prickle of worry about what happens if you stop guarding the well, let that feeling be seen. You might imagine that sensation as a breeze blowing across the surface of the water. It is a part of your reality, and it doesn't need to be silenced or stilled. It only needs to be acknowledged. You can sit with it, breathe into the space around it, and notice how it loses its sharp, urgent edge when you stop trying to use it as a signal to move. Even noticing that you are restless is an act of profound wisdom. That small moment of recognition where you realize, I am leaning over the edge, again is the very moment the path begins to clear. It is the moment you stop being the well-keeper who judges the reflection and start being the witness to the sky that is already there. There is no need for a dramatic breakthrough. The moon does not stop shining because you stop watching the well. It continues to burn with an ancient, steady light, and you are always within its reach. You are doing perfectly well, simply by being the witness to your own stationary state tonight. If it feels right, you might visualize yourself standing up from the edge of the well. You don't need to do any heavy labor right now. The work of the night is not maintenance, but presence. Imagine yourself turning away from the dark water and looking up at the vastness that has been above you the entire time. You don't have to secure the courtyard. You only need to touch the cool stone of the wall, recognize its stability, and breathe. Feel the emptiness of your hands. They are not empty because you have lost something. They are empty because they are finally free to hold the space of the night. Let your hands rest against your heart, feeling its quiet, unmoving rhythm. And notice how that simple connection to your own body pulls your awareness out of the well and into the reality of the sky. If you find yourself drifting back to the rim, back to the desire to stare into the water, to track the reflection, or to worry about how your image looks to the world, that is perfectly acceptable. The mind is a seeker that has looked into the well for a long time. It does not know how to look up immediately. You can treat that desire with the same kindness you would show a tired companion who is afraid of being forgotten. You don't need to scold the companion. You don't need to force them to step back from the rim before they are ready. You can just notice the urge, acknowledge the fear that drives it, and then gently, so gently, turn your head back toward the center of your own body. Breathe, soften, and return. The sky is patient. The stars are waiting. They are not going anywhere, and neither are you. Feel the support of the coverlet against your skin, the way the bed is holding the structure of your life, even while you are resting. You are not a vessel that has missed its meaning. You are the sky that has always been the container. And being the sky is not a limitation. It is the very foundation of your capacity to rest. You can let the rope hang. You can let the water ripple. You can let the night be exactly as it is, without your permission or your oversight. You are anchored here, rooted and real, and there is no image left to prove. Observe the way your breath becomes quieter, the way the rhythm of your pulse slows to match the stillness of the courtyard. This is the natural outcome of stepping away from the well. This is what happens when you stop trying to harvest your own existence and start honoring the immediate. You are becoming a person of the sky, a person of the earth, a person who understands that the only light that matters is the one that is already present. In this breath, in this moment of quiet, in this safe, dark, and perfectly sufficient space. If you are feeling a lingering heaviness, do not be afraid. The stillness of the night is supposed to settle. That is where the quiet is. That is where the truth finds its purchase. You don't need to lighten your heart by force. You only need to ground it in the truth of your own experience. Whatever you are carrying, the shame of being behind, the anxiety of the unknown, the memory of trying to catch what was always meant to be free, let it rest by the well. Let it dissolve into the stone. The sky is vast enough to hold your history, your confusion, and your hope, and it will turn all of it into the very substance that sustains your rest. You are doing perfectly well, and the work of the night is almost done. Just keep breathing, keep sensing the ground, and keep letting go of the bucket. The world will continue to move without your management, and you at last are free to rest in the sanctuary of your own being. And perhaps this is where the teaching begins to touch your own heart in the quiet realization that you are not the one who must scoop the light out of the well, but the one who has always been under the light, already whole, just waiting for the water to stop being the focus of your life so you can finally see the stars. In a province far to the north, where the winter air could turn a man's breath into a cloud of fragile ice, there lived a student named Sora who had spent years searching for a single truth that would end his inner turmoil. He was a man defined by a persistent, gnawing suspicion that he was missing the point of his own life. Everywhere he looked, he saw others who seemed to move with a grounded, silent grace, while he felt as though he were perpetually running on a treadmill of his own making, clutching a collection of heavy stone-carved scrolls. He believed these scrolls contained the secret meaning of existence, a map that would finally guide him to the end of his restlessness. He carried them everywhere, tucked into his thick woolen robes, his posture perpetually bent under the weight of his own need to know. Sora sought out a teacher known only as the Stonebreaker, a woman who lived in a small, windowless cabin at the edge of a frozen lake. When Sora arrived, his hands were trembling from the cold, and his mind was a storm of anxious questions. He fell to his knees and begged the woman to explain why he felt so empty, why he felt that his life was a hollow shell, and how he could finally reach the peace he saw in the quiet of the mountain. The woman did not look up from the small brazier where she was heating a pot of tea. She simply nodded toward a patch of hard, frozen earth outside her door and handed Sora a heavy iron chisel and a rusted mallet. "Go to the center of the lake," she said, her voice like the shifting of gravel. "Break the ice and find the bottom of the water. Do not return until you have touched the floor of the lake." Sora, eager for a path, took the tools and hurried out into the biting wind. He began to hammer at the thick, translucent sheet of ice. He worked for hours, his muscles screaming, his breath ragged, his mind filled with the singular, desperate goal of finishing this task so he could finally earn the teacher's wisdom. He thought that if he could just break through, if he could just reach the bottom, he would be given the secret map he so desired. As the sun began to dip behind the peaks, painting the sky in shades of bruised purple and cold gold, Sora finally broke through the final layer of ice. The water was black and frigid, swirling with an intensity that made him dizzy. He lowered his hand into the dark, reaching down, further than his arm could stretch, but he felt nothing but the deep, cold pull of the current. He realized with a sinking heart that the lake was far deeper than his reach. He felt a wave of profound defeat, a sense of failure so total that it stopped him in his tracks. He sank to his knees on the ice, the iron tools slipping from his numb, blistered fingers. He did not cry out. He did not try to find a longer stick. He simply sat there, his head bowed, realizing that he had been trying to measure the infinite with the reach of a single hand. In that moment of absolute surrender, he stopped trying to touch the bottom. He stopped looking for the floor. He simply sat, his hands resting on his thighs, and watched the way the wind moved across the dark, swirling water where the hole had been broken. He felt the cold on his face, the ache in his legs, and the profound, silent presence of the mountain watching him. He noticed that his mind, which had been shouting questions for years, had suddenly grown quiet. It had nothing left to say, because it had nothing left to prove. He was no longer a student trying to reach the bottom. He was simply a man sitting on the ice in the middle of a vast winter night. He stayed there for a long time, not because he was waiting for a sign, but because there was nowhere else to go. When he finally stood up and walked back to the cabin, his movements were different. He had left the tools on the ice. He had left the heavy, stone-carved scrolls somewhere along the path. He did not feel enlightened. He did not feel powerful. He felt only a strange, clean lightness in his chest, as if a weight he had carried since childhood had been quietly unbuckled. He entered the cabin and sat before the teacher, his hands empty and his shoulders dropped away from his ears. The teacher poured him a cup of steaming tea and pushed it across the wooden board toward him. "You did not touch the bottom," the teacher said, a faint, knowing smile touching her lips. Sora looked at her, his eyes clear and steady. "I did not," he replied. "I reached as far as I could, and I found only water." "And what did you find when you stopped reaching?" she asked. Sora took a sip of the tea, feeling the warmth spread through his frozen veins. I found that I was still sitting there, he said, and the lake was still there, and the moon was still shining. I realized I didn't need the bottom to know the lake was deep. I just needed to stop pretending I was the one who had to measure it. This shift in Sora's spirit, the moment he let go of the iron tools, is the quiet transformation that is available to you right now. You have been hammering at the ice of your own life, convinced that if you could just get deep enough, if you could just find the absolute rock-bottom truth of your own identity, you would finally be safe. You have been measuring your worth by the depth of your reach, and because your reach is only human, you have been convinced that you are perpetually falling short. But the wisdom of the frozen lake is that the depth is not something you are required to touch. The depth is simply the reality in which you are floating. You do not need to measure the bottom to belong to the water. This transformation is not a magical arrival at a state of constant, unwavering peace. It is the subtle, powerful choice to stop using your struggle as a measure of your existence. When you feel the familiar urge to hammer the ice, the urge to analyze your mistakes until you are exhausted, or to rehearse your future until you are paralyzed, this is the moment you can choose the path of the student who left the tools behind. You do not have to abandon your goals, and you do not have to stop growing. You only have to stop believing that your worth depends on your ability to force a breakthrough. You are allowed to stop hammering. You are allowed to sit on the ice, empty-handed, and let the truth of your own presence be enough. Notice the way your body responds when you hear this. Does the part of you that is always measuring feel a slight, sudden softening? That is the sound of the iron tools hitting the ice. That is the sound of your own long overdue surrender to the reality that you were never designed to be the measurer of your own deep. You are the witness of it. You are the one who is currently sitting in the vast, quiet expanse of your own being. And that is a task of such profound magnitude that it requires nothing else of you. You are not failing because you haven't reached the bottom. You are succeeding because you have finally stopped trying to exhaust yourself by fighting the lake. As you rest here, imagine yourself sitting on the ice. The sky above you immense and unbothered, the water beneath you deep and mysterious. You do not need to look down. You do not need to look for a reflection. You can simply look up, feel the cool air, the silence, the utter stillness of your own heart, when it is not busy trying to solve the riddle of its own depth. This is a space of immense safety. You are supported by the very things you were trying so hard to measure. And you are finally beginning to see that the measuring was only a way to distract yourself from the beauty of simply being present. You don't need to be anyone other than the person who has sat down and set the tools aside. The transformation is already occurring in the way your breath is settling, in the way your heart is choosing its own rhythm, and in the way you are finally allowing yourself to be carried by the depth, rather than trying to conquer it. You are doing well. You are so much stronger than your anxiety would ever admit, because you are strong enough to admit when you are tired of the hammer. You are strong enough to sit in the dark, empty-handed, and know that you are still here, and that the light is still shining. Let this feeling of lightness grow. Let it fill the spaces where the need for answers used to dwell. There is no urgency in the moonlight. There is no hurry in the lake. Everything you have been searching for in the depths is already present in the fact that you are capable of stopping. You are arriving, not at the end of a long, desperate reach, but at the beginning of a life that is lived with open hands. And this is a state that you can inhabit whenever you choose to stop hammering, whenever you choose to look up, and whenever you remember that you are the one who is being held, always by the depth itself. The exhausted, hollow feeling you carry is rarely a consequence of the life you are actually leading. It is the silent, grinding tax you pay for the constant internal monitoring of that life. You have been treating your own existence as if it were a fragile reflection on the surface of a dark well. And so you spend every waking second adjusting the posture of your mind, checking the stillness of your emotions, and bracing against the wind that threatens to create a ripple. This is the mechanism of control, the anxious, relentless fantasy that if you are the one constantly watching the surface, you can prevent the world from being what it is. You judge your own reactions. You critique your own pacing. and you analyze your own drift as if you were a faulty mirror that has been poorly constructed. But this is the work of a seeker who has forgotten that their own eyes are made of the same sky that holds the light. When you direct your own judgment toward your own unfolding, you are not steering toward clarity. You are merely fracturing the piece that was already present in the sky above the well. You have been trying to earn your place under the moon through the sheer, exhausting labor of your vigilance, believing that if you are worried enough, you will finally become worthy of the light. But worry is a heavy, leaden bucket that does not reveal the way. It only keeps you tethered to the cold, circular rim of the well, staring down at the water until you are blind to the stars that are already burning. The deepest mechanism of your suffering is the habit of turning the original, unavoidable pain of life into a permanent identity. Buddhist wisdom describes this as the cycle of the two arrows. The first arrow is the reality of your life, the moments when the light shifts unexpectedly, the times you feel the sudden chill of the night, the inevitable realization that you cannot stop the ripples, and the quiet loneliness of being a separate traveler looking for meaning. This first arrow is the condition of being a human soul. It is the sudden drop in temperature, the unexpected gust of wind, and the natural weathering of your own spirit. We cannot stop the first arrow from landing. Life is, by its very nature, a series of shifts, surprises, and challenges that we did not choose and cannot fully command. To feel the impact of this, to feel hurt, to feel tired, to feel the weight of your own smallness is not a sign of failure. It is a sign of your genuine living connection to the world. However, the second arrow, the one that causes the most profound, lingering exhaustion, is the one you fire at yourself the moment the first one lands. This second arrow is your resistance, your self-judgment, and your refusal to accept that you are currently standing beside a well that is prone to rippling. It is the voice that whispers, "I should be more enlightened by now," or "if I were a better person, I wouldn't feel this hollow hunger," or "I must immediately fix this before someone sees that I am disturbed." When you fire this second arrow, you are no longer dealing with the initial encounter with the wind. You are now struggling with the secondary injury of your own refusal to be human. You are taking a natural, temporary experience of challenge and turning it into a chronic, heavy state of shame. You are trying to use your mind to battle the turbulence, and because the turbulence is far larger and more fluid than the mind, the battle will always result in a feeling of defeat. You are draining your vitality by trying to maintain a narrative of total calm when the truth of your life is one of constant, beautiful, and necessary change. Consider how often you rehearse the future or replay the past, trying to curate your own progress to ensure that your path remains unblemished. You are afraid of the ripple, so you treat it like an enemy that must be anticipated and defeated through constant internal tracking. You fear that if you are not currently in the process of calculating your next move, you are lost or, worse, somehow unworthy of the light. But this fear of not knowing is not a form of wisdom, it is a cage. It is a way of holding your existence at arm's length, so you don't have to experience the vulnerability of simply being. When you replay the past, you are trying to use your mind to draw water from a different well, believing that if you just understand the depth differently, you will be safe from the cold. When you rehearse the future, you are trying to catch a moon that hasn't risen yet, believing that if you just anticipate every shift, you will be invulnerable to the tides. But the sky of your life is not a fixed map. It is a living, breathing movement that requires your willingness to be held, not your insistence on dictating the reflection. True resilience, and the inner peace you have been quietly searching for, is not found in the absence of difficulty. It is found in a fundamental shift in how you relate to that difficulty. Peace is the capacity to stand in the middle of your own life, with all its hidden depths, its rough patches, and its moments of genuine, raw uncertainty, and choose not to fire the second arrow. It is the ability to acknowledge, yes, the water is turbulent right now, without immediately tacking on the accusation that you are somehow wrong for being the one who sees it. When you stop feeding the second arrow, the original experience has a space in which to breathe. It stops being a permanent identity and starts being an event that is passing through you. You stop being the person who is the struggle and start being the person who hosts the struggle. This is the profound, quiet power of the awakened heart. It does not demand that the wind stop blowing. It only demands that you stop making the wind your enemy. If you can notice the urge to control, name it with compassion. When you feel the need to seek approval from the courtyard, see it as the act of a traveler who is tired of the dark and is just looking for a single landmark to guide the way. You don't have to hate yourself for wanting that landmark. You only need to see that the safety you are seeking from the well is already burning within the depth of your own awareness. You are not a faulty bucket that needs to be coerced into perfection. You are a complete, unfolding expression of the living sky. And your hesitations are not reasons for shame, they are the marks of your own unique path through the valley. The suffering you have experienced because you thought you needed to be the master of the surface is now beginning to lose its hold, because you are finally realizing that you were never the one who needed to force the water to be still. You were always the traveler who could host the memory of the light, the touch of the wind, and the deep, quiet silence of the courtyard. The integration of this wisdom takes time, and you are not expected to change your entire way of being in a single evening. The practice is to observe your own mind with the same gentle, curious attention that you might give to a flickering flame. When you feel the tension of the rope in your hands, simply take a breath. Notice the pattern. Notice the way you are trying to bend reality to fit a trajectory that is too narrow for your actual life. And then, choose not to strain. Choose to let the bucket rest. Choose to let the weight of your own expectations rest on the cold, solid flagstones. You are doing something incredibly courageous, simply by allowing yourself to be carried by the dark. You are participating in the unfolding of your own reality in a way that is honest, fluid, and profoundly kind. As you sit in this quiet, allow the feeling of the need to be navigating to dissipate into the dark, welcoming atmosphere of your room. You are not a project. You are a presence. You are not a well that requires constant cleaning. You are a reality that is ready to be held. There is nothing about you that is inherently broken, and there is no part of your story that needs to be smoothed away for you to deserve this rest. The urgency of the hunt is clearing, and what remains is not a statue of perfection, but the simple, breathing truth of a person who is finally coming home to their own center. You are held by the same light that moves the moon, and you can trust that light to take care of you. Even when you have stopped trying to catch it in your hands, you are doing well, and you are far more whole than your anxieties have ever been willing to admit. There is no urgency here, and there is no expectation to reach a final, perfect answer tonight. Just breathe into the space you have cleared. Just let the rope stay where it is. You are finally, after all this time, safe enough to be exactly who you are. With all your beautiful, unpolished, and perfectly honest experiences intact, the wind is blowing, the night is deep, and for this moment, you are allowed to simply exist. And perhaps this is where the teaching begins to touch your own heart in the quiet realization that you are not the one who must scoop the light out of the well, but the one who has always been under the light, already whole, just waiting for the water to stop being the focus of your life so you can finally see the stars. The transition from the stillness of the courtyard into the rapid, relentless rhythm of your everyday life is where the true narrative of your healing is actually written. It is easy to find a sense of clarity when you are listening to the story of a student who finally set down his iron tools. But when you are caught in the middle of a Tuesday, staring at a screen while waiting for a response that refuses to arrive, the heavy bucket of your own expectations often feels far more burdensome than it did in the silence of the temple. You might find yourself checking your phone for some kind of external signal, hoping that a single notification will settle the flutter in your chest and confirm that you are worthy, that you are remembered, that you are still a vital part of the world. When the reply does not come, you may feel your mind immediately beginning to reach for the rope, trying to adjust the position of your own worth, trying to find an explanation for the silence that makes you feel small or forgotten. In those moments of modern solitude, you are trying to force a shape onto the day that it refuses to take. Instead of following the thread of that panic, try taking one breath before you reach for the screen again. Just one. That breath is not a solution to the silence, but it is a way of reclaiming your own agency. It is an act of recognizing that you can exist in the uncertainty without immediately needing to fill it with a defensive, weary performance of your own adequacy. Maybe you find yourself lying awake long after the house has gone quiet, replaying a conversation where you felt clumsy, exposed, or misunderstood. You are back in that moment, mentally reenacting your words, trying to imagine how you could have been steadier, more composed, or more impactful. You are attempting to fight a ghost from days ago, trying to change the trajectory of an event that has already settled into the dust. This is the habit of the traveler who fears the dark well. You believe that if you study the error long enough, you will prevent it from ever happening again. But this is the second arrow, the injury you inflict upon your own peace to make up for the limitation that already occurred. When you catch yourself doing this, try to visualize that memory not as a stain on your identity, but as a single leaf falling into the courtyard at dusk it happened. It is part of the landscape. You do not need to pull it out of the past and press it back into your current life to justify your worth. You do not need to discard the entire experience. You can simply acknowledge that the leaf fell. Forgive yourself for being a person who is still learning to navigate the winds of time, and let your focus return to the texture of your blankets, the weight of your body, and the fact that you are safe in this room, right now. There is often a pervasive pressure to feel like you are behind in life, that others have mastered the art of being, while yours remains a series of revisions and crossed-out lines. You might feel the burden of performing your stability, of keeping your hands steady on the bucket, even when you are feeling hollow or fragile. You offer help to others, you smile through the fatigue, you maintain the appearance of a master of your own destiny, but inside, you feel the strain of holding up a narrative that you are terrified will be judged as empty. This is the exhaustion of the one who has become a statue by the well. It is the effort of maintaining a version of yourself that is meant for a portrait, at the expense of the person who just needs to feel the cool, damp shadow of their own sanctuary. You do not have to be the repository of every achievement. You are allowed to be the space around the experience. You are allowed to admit that you are tired, to say I do not have the sky figured out yet, or to simply step away from the edge for an evening. Your worth is not a transaction. It is not something you have to earn through your output, your charm, or the perfection of your composure. It is inherent, and it is here whether you are productive or whether you are still. Consider the times you feel the sudden sharp need to control a relationship, to force an outcome because you are terrified of losing the connection or being revealed as less than. You might find yourself over-explaining, apologizing for your presence, or checking in too often, all in an effort to keep the walls of the relationship from crumbling under the pressure of your own neediness. But when you pull a boundary too tight, you don't strengthen the connection, you make it brittle. You make it prone to snapping under the pressure of your own anxiety. Real connection is found in the spaces where there is no tension. It is found when you can allow the other person to be who they are, without needing them to fulfill a role in your internal ledger of security. You can care deeply without gripping the bucket so hard your hands bleed. You can offer love without making it a currency of validation. This requires a specific kind of courage, the courage to risk being seen without the display of your defenses, and the courage to trust that you are enough, even if the other person does not mirror your efforts exactly as you expected. You may also struggle with the feeling that you have not earned your rest, that if you aren't constantly solving, analyzing, or preparing for the next demand, you are being irresponsible. You might feel guilty for sitting in a quiet room without a task, or for closing your eyes before the day is perfectly in order. This is the belief that rest is a reward to be unlocked by your productivity, rather than a fundamental necessity of the living, breathing human form. You do not have to earn the right to exist. You do not have to prove your value to the world before you are allowed to close your eyes. When that guilt arises, treat it like a dry, dusty leaf that has blown into your courtyard. Acknowledge that the guilt is a habit, a voice from the well that equates survival with endless scooping. You can choose to set it down. You can choose to rest simply because you are here, and the body, like the sky itself, requires seasons of stillness to remain resonant. It is helpful to remember that mindfulness is not an escape from these modern pressures. It is a way to inhabit them differently. A breath before you answer an email is not a waste of time. It is a form of wisdom that protects the integrity of your own spirit. Choosing not to engage in a toxic spiral of comparison. When you see someone else's highlight reel on a screen is not weakness, it is a profound act of self-discipline. You are creating a boundary between the world's constant noise and your own internal sanctuary. Every time you consciously return to the present, you are choosing to walk the path without trying to turn it into a battlefield. You are saying, I will meet the world when it arrives, but for now, I am here in my own skin, and that is sufficient. Even in the smallest moments, the way you hold a cup of tea, the way you listen to the sound of the rain, the way you walk through a doorway, you can practice this. You do not need to leave your life to find the garden. The garden is the attention you bring to these moments. When you feel the familiar pull to worry, pause and ask yourself, is this worry helping me? Is it solving anything? Or is it just the rhythm of the traveler, straining at the bucket for a reflection that hasn't arrived? If it is just the straining, then let it sit. You do not have to carry the burden of the rope tonight. You can step away, you can soften your jaw, and you can let the silence of the room be your guide. This does not mean the difficulties of your life will vanish. The responsibilities will still be there. The world will still be complex, and the path will remain demanding. But you will meet these things with a different spirit. You will meet them as someone who is rooted, someone who knows that their identity is not tied to the clarity of a reflection. You will meet them with the quiet, steady strength of a person who understands that the beauty of life is in the seasons, the rain, and the willingness to let the truth emerge in its own time. You are learning that you are not the builder of your own destiny. You are the one who gets to participate in the flow for a brief, precious span of time. And that is enough. It is more than enough. Stay with this feeling of lightness. The next moments are yours to simply inhabit without trying to capture them or wall them into something they are not yet. You are doing perfectly well, and the night is finally holding you with a gentleness you are ready to receive. The well is behind you, the bucket is set aside, and you are finally entering the space where the noise is allowed to dissolve, unheeded, unmanaged, and perfectly at peace in the dark. The iron tools you carried so faithfully are lying on the ice where you left them, forgotten in the deepening blue of the winter night. And you are no longer the one who must measure the depth of the lake. You have safely retreated from the frozen center of your own striving, leaving behind the need to break the surface, to reach for the bottom, or to prove the capacity of your own hands. The water will continue to be deep, swirling with its own hidden currents and secret silence. But you are not the one who needs to probe it. You are not the one who needs to quantify your own existence. You are the sky itself, expansive, witnessing, and entirely at home in the quiet dark of the evening. Feel the weight of your body sinking into the mattress, your limbs growing heavy and rooted, mimicking the stillness of the mountain that stands guard over the lake. There is a profound, quiet safety in this release, a realization that the depth was always there, waiting to hold you, even when your mind was back on the ice, lost in the restless, swirling urgency of trying to be someone who knew the bottom. The labor of being the measurer of your own soul is finished for tonight. You are not a seeker of lost floors, but a container of infinite sky. And the sky requires nothing of you but your presence. Feel the tension draining from your jaw, the hard, clamped lines of the determined student softening into the open, unmoving face of one who has finally returned to the shore. Your hands are uncurled, your palms are resting in the cradle of the dark, and your heart is beating with the slow, steady rhythm of a world that is already at rest. This is the truth of your existence, not the frantic hammering at the frozen surface, but the quiet, resonant pulse of the life that is breathing itself without your oversight or your anxiety. Let the shadows of the room be a gentle, protective frost. Let the silence of the night be the sanctuary you have sought in the heat of your striving. You are anchored here, rooted and real, and there is no distance left to measure. Each breath is a slow, deepening invitation to let go of the last remnants of the iron mallet. As you inhale, imagine the stillness of the winter air filling your chest, and as you exhale, Imagine the grit and the friction of your mental measuring dissolving into the dark. You are becoming as still as the frozen lake at midnight, waiting for the natural, unforced unfolding of the morning. There is no need to rush the thaw, and there is no need to fear the dark water beneath. The seasons will turn, the ice will melt, and you will be there, ready to inhabit the earth. But for now, you are simply the life that rests. You are the sky, you are the mountain, and you are the quiet, dark space where everything is allowed to be exactly as it is, without being quantified, without being carved, and without being solved. The tools are cold and silent, abandoned on the expanse while you are warm, heavy, and sinking deeper into the restorative, dreamless calm of the night. There is a deep, ancient wisdom in this surrender. You are not losing your way, you are returning to the source of your own stability. The mind that worries, the mind that calculates, the mind that clings to the phantom bottom, all of these are just travelers, passing shadows on the vast open wall of your awareness. You are the wall, you are the foundation that holds the shadow, and you are the stillness that allows the lake to be so remarkably, beautifully deep. Nothing is broken. Nothing is missing. Nothing needs to be measured before you can close your eyes and drift into the soft, velvet dark. You are simply a traveler who has reached the end of the long winter, and the journey has led you at last to the gate of your own sanctuary. Let the door close behind you. Let the iron tools remain where they lay. Let the cold dissolve like mist in the starlight. There is nothing left to calculate, and there is no depth left to prove. The lake is still, the night is deep. The earth is holding you, firm and patient, in the palm of its ancient hand. You can stop probing the dark. You can stop bracing against the cold. You can stop the frantic, lonely work of being the one who must touch the bottom for the mountain to notice. The lake is only a depth, and the depth is only a presence, and the presence is not your responsibility. You are free to let the life unfold without your constant measurement. You are free to let the night take you into its cool, protective center, where the only thing that matters is the rhythm of your own quiet pulse. Drift down deeper still into the dark, rich loam of this piece. The chisel is gone. The scrolls are fading. You are finally completely and deeply at home in your own unmoving stillness. And if the meaning you were trying so hard to measure has been waiting in the silence you were trying so hard to break, what would happen if you simply let the night hold you until you were ready to wake as yourself?